Good morning. Welcome to You, Math, and Me. My name is George Randall, and today we're going to talk about ratios and rates. And the reason we're going to talk about that is because, again, we're talking about fractions. And a ratio compares two numbers. And we sometimes compare numbers with subtraction and also with division. But what we're going to look at today is how we compare numbers, and we call it using ratios. Let's say, for example, University of Maryland beats a team, Tech, by a score of 21 and is colon to 7. And there's a lot of ways we can talk about that. We could say by subtraction, 21 subtract 7 equals 14. And we say that Maryland beat Tech by 14 points. Or we say 21 to 7. And the way we write that is 21 over 7. Again, a fraction. And we also can express this by saying that Maryland beat Tech 7 times 3, which equals 21, by 3 scores. Again, various ways to compare numbers. Okay? So, the way that we want to look at this is we say in English 21 to 7 with the colon 21 to 7 or 21 over 7, all expressing the same thing. Okay. Now, there are other ways that we might read something in the newspaper, and it may say in Washington, D.C. that there are 3 times as many Democrats as there are, for every 3 registered Democrats, there are 2 registered Republicans. Now, we don't know the number, but that's a way of expressing a ratio. Okay, we don't know the number, but that's a way of expressing a ratio. Let's look at some students in school. Let's say there's 36 students in a class, and 12 are girls, and 24 are boys. And we can then state this. There are 24 boys to 12 girls. Or we could go the other way and say 12 girls to 24 boys. Now, looking at that, a fraction. Remember way back when we listed our greatest common factor? And for the number 24, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12. And for the number 12, we'll just say 12. And circle that one, and watch this. The ratio of boys to girls is 2 to 1. Or girls to boys, 1 to 2. Comparing 2 numbers. That's what we're doing here. Okay? And in this ratio, in your classroom, your teacher may ask you to, for this particular item, show this comparison several different ways. And again, we look at those factors. You got 24 over 12. And again, we had listed, let's use the factor 3. And whatever you do to the numerator, you must do to the denominator. You've heard me say that. 24 divided by 3 is 8. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. For every 8 boys, there are 4 girls. That's a ratio. And guess what? When we get these all together, I'm going to show you something. Let's do another. 24 over 12. And we're going to use one of the factors of 6. 24 divided by 6 is 4. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Again, for every 4 boys, it's 2 girls. Now look at this. Again, we're comparing 2 numbers, but in each case, we started out with 24 over 12, which equaled 8 over 4, which equaled 4 over 2, which equaled 2 over 1. "24 boys to 12 girls, 8 boys to 4 girls, 2, or 4 boys to 2 girls, and 2 to 1. Equivalent fractions, a way of expressing numbers, comparing numbers. Okay? And again, this is all back to our fractions and our basic facts. Another way to compare numbers. And what we've done here, the comparisons are all equivalent fractions. It has not changed the value. Okay? It's very important that we know our basic facts in each and every case. Again, 2 to 1. 2 boys to 1 girl. If you have any issue with this, you can reach me at gerandall22@gmail.com. Okay. Now, next portion is to look at some rates. Now we're comparing 2 different things. And in the sentence, you might hear 60 miles per hour, okay? And when you hear the word per, we're talking about rates. We're comparing 2 different things. For example, you buy chicken, might be $1.75 a pound, you know, or you might be getting some sugar. It'll be a certain amount per ounce. So we're going to look at something here where Sally, for 7 tablespoons, she will get 2 quarts, and this is 7 tablespoons of sugar, 2 quarts of lemonade. Okay? And it says, how much sugar will you need if you do 6 quarts? And notice, in this ratio, I put the quarts as the denominator, and we don't know how much sugar, right? We don't know how much. That's the question mark. Now, just like we did here, when we had 12 girls to 24 boys, and I took a factor. In this case, I said 6 over 12, which meant I multiplied by 2. Here, what did I multiply 2 by to get 6? 3. So whatever we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. So the answer to this particular issue is 3 times 7, 21 tablespoons of sugar. So again, we're comparing rates. For every 2 quarts of lemonade, we need 7 tablespoons of sugar. If we make a larger quantity, for every 6 quarts, we need 21 tablespoons of sugar. We're speaking about rates. Again, X amount of 60 miles per hour, so forth. Okay. Let's do another one. And the question reads, example says, a trip out southwest we traveled, let's erase the top, 42 miles an hour. Okay? 42 miles per hour. How many miles will we travel in 3 hours? Again, whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So if we stay at this steady speed, 42 miles per hour, in 3 hours, we're going to travel 126 miles. That's a rate. 42 miles per hour. The question was, how far will we travel in 3 hours? And in this case, 126 miles. When you come back, we'll talk more about this, but if you have any issue, you can reach me at gerrandall22@gmail.com. And we'll be back in a few minutes to talk about some more rates, and maybe we'll have a chance for proportions. Thank you. Hello again, and welcome back to You, Math, and Me. I want to talk about test scores before we proceed with any more rates, because often we take a test, and let's say there's 30 questions, and we may get 25 right. How do we know what our score was? Well, again, we do something called checking that ratio. And the way we do this is, again, we set up a problem where it says 30 divided by 25. I'm sorry, I wrote that incorrectly. Out of 30 questions, we got 25 correct. And that's a division problem. So 25 goes in the house, because that's what that says. Let me put a decimal, because 30 cannot go into 25. However, how many 30s can we get out of 250? 8. Bring down our 0. 30's out of 100, 3. And this is going to repeat and repeat. So you get an 83.3%. Now what we've done here is compared two numbers. And it's important to know, sometimes when you're taking a test and you want to get a B, A, whatever the case may be, then you need to know how many you got leeway for getting wrong or incorrect. Depending on the school you go to, if you go to a parochial school, you're not happy with this grade unless you like C's, because in a parochial school, most parochial schools, 93 to 100, A, 85 to 92, B, and 78 to 84, C. And on that particular test, you got a C. Now, of course, in public schools, that would have been a B. And you would have been happy with that. But that's how another comparison of a test score. And what I'm trying to show you is some real life things. Now, (3 over 10 equals) and what we're going to do here, we could do one of two things. We can multiply by 3, and that would be 9/30. Or we could do something in reference to what we call proportions. And what we're going to be doing, and it's so important that we know our multiplication facts, because we're going to multiply the extremes times the means. And in this case, 3 times 30 is 90. And it says the means times the extremes equals, and what we don't know, we're going to use this question mark and give it a variable value for a moment. And now we've got a one-step variable problem. But look what happens. We got to find out what a is, so we divide by 10. Over here we're left with a, and 90 divided by 10 is 9. Didn't we say that earlier? Look at this. We've written, we compared 3/10 to 9/30, which is an equal fraction. It's also an equal ratio. And when we talk about proportions, we're looking at the means times the extremes. They must equal. Okay? And all you're doing is writing an equivalent fraction. Let's look at it again. Two-thirds equals $20 over what? And again, 20, right? 2 times 20, I'm sorry, 2 times 10 is 20. So down here we must multiply by 10 to get 30. Because again, whatever we do to the numerator, we must do to the denominator. And we've written an equivalent fraction. However, we also want to look at this. Three times 20 is 60. And we're going to give that question mark a variable of b. And then 2 times 2b equals 60. We're going to divide by 2. And b equals 30. The way to solve a proportion. So with what we've done today, we have looked at, again, we looked at that fraction again, and actually we call that a ratio. There are 2 balls to 3 gloves. And we can write an equivalent by multiplying by 5, numerator and denominator, and that would be 10 to 15. Okay? And that would be an equal fraction to this. Okay? Ratio. Rates. $42 miles per hour. How far will we travel in 3 hours? 126 miles. And that was rates. And the last thing, proportions. Okay? And again, 2/3 is equal to, in this case, 20 over what? Means 60, that's 3 times 20, equals 2c. Divide by 2, c equals 30. And again, what we've written in each case is an equivalent fraction, comparing two numbers, comparing per hour rates, and so forth. Okay, if you have any issue with any of these things that we've gone over today, you can reach me at gerandall22@gmail.com. And I want to thank you for coming, seeing You, Math, and Me. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.